Hi, my name is Gordy Sheer. I'm currently the Director of Marketing and Sponsorship for USA Luge. And before that, I had a history as an athlete competing in the sport of luge, a three-time Olympian in the doubles discipline with my teammate, Chris Thorpe. And Chris and I competed in the 92, 94, and 98 Olympic Games and took silver in the 98 Games and also won the overall World Cup in 1996-7 season, and also we were overall World Cup championships in 95 and 96. So, or pardon me, we won 2 World Championship silver medals in 1995 and 1996. Also an Ohio State University graduate, and looking forward to connecting and talking here with Frank.
Okay, well, we're going to jump around the timeline a little bit here because that's the way I do things. Sorry about that.
No problem.
ADD or whatever I have. So the one thing I want to ask that kind of goes with where we're at now, when you said there was a period where you went from one Olympics 2 years to the next Olympics because that's when we changed the calendar.
Yep.
How did that feel? Because that's where we're going to be kind of with those summer games now. How did that work to your benefit, you think, because you were able to squeeze in more Olympics, or was it less training time and all that? How did that play out?
Yeah, after the 92 games, the Winter Olympics and Summer Olympics made the decision to alternate so that they were happening winter, summer every 2 years. So I kind of hit the sweet spot, I thought. We were able to go right from an Olympics into a pre-Olympic year immediately. And I kind of enjoyed sustaining that level of focus. Not that we aren't focused all the time, but, right. It was kind of fun because, that momentum we were able to just kind of keep that momentum. And it was also at an important part of our careers where we were learning how to compete at big events. So, we were 12th in 92 and then 5th in 94, and we were 4,000ths off of our teammates for 4th place. So, luge is obviously, the time is, time margins can be pretty tight. 4,000ths of a second is not a whole lot. But, so I really thought it was a great opportunity for us, especially, like I said, since we're learning so much so fast.
Okay, now let's jump to how did you get involved? First of all, where'd you grow up from?
I grew up in a town called Croton, New York, and it's north of New York City. Not a lot of luge there, but I got involved with the sport when we were up here in Lake Placid, where I live currently, and a van drove by that had a telephone number for a U.S. luge team, and I wrote it down as a 12-year-old kid and called them up and said, I want to try it. My parents just kind of assumed you're too young or you're too small, right, or, they're not going to take you or whatever. And, 2 weeks later, I was trying the sport for the first time. So,
wow.
It was much different than how we find athletes now, which is, something we can talk about. It's actually pretty interesting.
Okay. Well, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Sure.
I grew up the first 6-7 years of my life in Plattsburgh, New York, upstate New York. So
You're my neighbor.
And when the sun goes down in August, it doesn't come back up for a long time. So
don't remind me.
Used to live, of course. That's why I live in Las Vegas. I got tired of that. So all right. So as a youngster, you're involved in something that is, I'm going to assume, a lot of grown people doing.
Yeah. When I started, there were not a lot of kids involved. If you think of, a sport's natural development pyramid sort of being a triangle, we were an upside down triangle. We had a lot of older people, and then down at the bottom there was young people, and very, very few. So I was one of the few youngsters involved, and that really, to be honest, worked to my advantage. Luge is very much an experience-based sport. So the more runs you can get while your body is learning, the better. So that, it's just like anything else. You see how kids learn when they're at that age. If you can get the basics down at an early age, it gives you a huge advantage over others as you start to, get older. And I was really one of the first generations where we had a proper junior team and went up through the ranks, and really learned from early ages.
Now, because there are so few tracks in the States, is there a lot of travel involved in that, especially for a young person?
There's a tremendous amount of travel involved with our sport. We've got a track in Park City now, which we didn't have when I was a kid. There was a small natural track up in Michigan, but I never even went to that. So really, by the time I was 15, I was racing, training all over the place, primarily Europe. I'd been to Soviet countries when they were under Soviet influence, East Germany,
right,
Russia, Latvia. At the time, it was part of the Soviet Union. But yeah, I mean, a ton of travel. We've got a World Cup circuit and a Junior World Cup circuit. So, it requires a tremendous amount of time. Our season's probably 6 months long. So.
And so as a young person, you have to mature pretty quickly or not only to do the sport, but to do what you want to do as a person, because you got to get back. Did your parents travel with you, or?
No, we would go out as a team, and we would have a coach and a junior team manager. And, that's how we did it. We just went out and tried to keep up with our studies. I was lucky. I had a high school that was really helpful and let me do my thing and held me responsible. But, it was a unique experience. And as you said, it was a lot of responsibility that was placed on my shoulders, and you kind of have to grow up fast.
And as you said off the air, then you translate that to being a Buckeye and not being in class every quarter. I'm sure that's got to be a little weird.
Yeah, I mean, my collegiate career was definitely strange. I would be there for typically just the spring quarter back then when they were on quarters. And it was really focusing on a very intense period of schooling. Occasionally I do some summer school, but for the most part I didn't. It was a lot of picking up credits here and there when I can. And, 8 years of Ohio State University later, I did graduate.
I can relate. Now, while you're there, what kind of training were you able to do while you're in school? Or are you able to do any kind of training when you're in school? Just dry land kind of stuff?
Yeah. It's basically just following your strength program that your coach gives to you. And, just trying to, the good thing is that in the spring, it's a lot of just basic strength stuff. So I didn't really need a whole lot of specialized equipment. I just needed a decent gym that had all of the things that I needed. And it really wasn't much of a problem to stay in shape when I was at Ohio State.
I can recall being in Larkins Hall and being in the red gym. And I can recall a guy in between basketball courts, running in between courts and throwing a ball against the wall. And we watched him for about, a month. Like, what are you doing? Training for team handball. What's that?
Yeah.
we have one of those teams, so I understand that there are a lot of people that are training for things in those facilities that are school affiliated and not school affiliated. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I did meet a lot of athletes who were in the Olympic development system when I was there at Ohio State. So it was pretty interesting to see. I was not the only one in that sort of weird position where you're training for a major event and doing it kind of on your own. But
I think Ohio State fosters that. I mean, or at least back then, they had the facilities, and there were always, people you could work with as far as working on your own, but working with them as well.
Yeah, and I actually was able to sneak into the field house, and once I made my first Olympic team, I think I got a little, I was able to sneak into some slightly better workout facilities than
Larkins.
Not that Larkins is bad.
Yeah. Okay, now you mentioned the first Olympics. Now, this is the question I ask everybody, and I get a different response from everybody. So when you find out you're on the Olympic team, you're like, okay, is that the great thing? Or it's like, now I really have to put it together? Is there a sense of relief at that point?
Well, going into, for us, our expectations were much different at all three Olympics. Our first Olympics, at that point, honestly, we were learning to race and learning to be consistent and learning to get the sled down the hill without crashing. So, I joke, but
I understand. Yeah.
At that point we were 20 years old, and it takes a long time to master the sport, especially, getting the double sled down the hill. So we just wanted to have two consistent runs where we felt we slid to the best of our ability. And we did that. We finished 12th, and, we were thrilled. But the real moment for me for that games was the opening ceremonies. It was something that I remember being a 6-year-old and looking at the opening ceremonies and going, oh my God, I want that. I want to be there.
Right.
And then, it had basically been like a normal race. We had just been preparing for the Olympics, training. You get there, probably you have a week of training before where you're taking a run or two a day. And then all of a sudden, it's not just a race. You're putting on the parade uniform, and even then it doesn't feel real until I remember walking. We went underneath the tunnel under the stadium, and then all of a sudden we're inside this huge, this massive stadium, and they announce this is the team from the United States. The crowd goes crazy, and then all of a sudden you're there, and it was unbelievable. I got lightheaded. I just couldn't believe it. And so that was definitely the moment for me at the 92 games in France. So and then, like I said, each of the three games had their moments. 98 obviously was getting a medal, which was, just incredible.
Well, okay. So you go to 92 and you have that experience, and you took the question right out of my mouth, because that's exactly where I was going to go. So we come to 94.
Yep.
And now you're a seasoned vet, right?
Yeah.
You know it all. There could be nothing that could be weird or different about this experience. And what did that feel like?
Well, same thing. The opening ceremonies were just still incredible. And I could qualify for 100 Olympic teams and it would still be amazing. The 94 games were our first time when we'd been in the top 5 or 6 consistently. And while we'd never gotten on the podium, I knew there was an outside shot at it. So again, I could kind of smell the podium, and we kind of knew it was a possibility, and we were going to go out there and do our best. But we came in 5th, which in all honesty is about where we should have finished.
We should have.
Yeah, we really did perform to our potential. The track in Norway, there was one particular section where a lot of athletes were having problems. The exit curve 13. We got through there cleanly. And, at that point we knew, okay, we can perform at the Olympics. And, it's just a question of getting more experience, getting faster. And then what happened is after the 94 season, 95, 96, 97, those were really good years. And we were on the podium in almost every race. And then in the pre-Olympic year, we won the overall World Cup in the pre-Olympic season. And then the Olympic season came, and our results went from 3rd to 5th to 9th to 13th. We just slid off, and we were in a real crisis, and we did everything we could do to try and figure out what was wrong. We thought, oh, maybe it's our sled. What did we do to the sled? Or, because of course it couldn't possibly be us, right?
Well, no.
And basically we went through a whole, I mean, I was riding other people's sleds with other athletes to figure out if it was something I was doing or if it was something the sled. And we basically figured out that it was us. And, you know, we had a couple weeks in Utah, or maybe a week in Utah, right before the Olympics, where we were just training like crazy before we went over and trying to figure out what was going on. And actually my teammate, Chris, broke his wrist while we were there. And so it was like, oh man, we're going from bad to worse here.
Right.
But I think in some ways it was the best thing that could have happened to us, because it just kind of forced us to really just go back to basics. We went and saw a sports psychologist who confirmed everything that we thought, which was, it's in your head and you guys just need to let the thing fly. So, so fast forward to the training for the Olympics, and, you know, you get 6 runs before the Olympic Games and in training. And we were 1, 2, or 3 in the rankings every one of those training runs. On our 6th and final run, we decide, all right, we're going to give it 100%. We're going to put on our fast race suits. You know, we're going to really show everybody, you know, what we can do. And we had a blazing fast start, a really great run, and we were in 10th place. So that's what we slept on. And the U.S. each nation brings 2 doubles teams to an Olympic competition. And in the year that we were faltering, our teammates, Mark Grimmett and Brian Martin, they were flying. They had kind of taken our role, and those guys were winning left and right. So I said, oh my God, I said to Mark, I said, I can't believe it. You know, we're with 10th place. What the hell? You know, we did everything right. And Mark said, just do what you did the first 5 runs. Like, right. Okay.
So I guess that makes sense, right?
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes you need someone to just really break it down for you.
Right, right.
So we went the next day, and after the first run, we were sitting in 2nd place, and you know, I could feel us starting to spool up a little bit between runs, and I just said, hold on, let's just, if we can't learn a lesson out of the road we've been on to this point, right, then we got problems. So let's just dial it back and do what we need to do, and bring the sled down the hill and trust ourselves. And that's what we did, and wound up getting a medal. And then, you know, there's another one of those moments, being on an Olympic podium that, you know, right, you dreamed of all your life, and then all of a sudden you're there, and it's just beyond description, really. You know, the culmination of, you know, at that point, 15 years of work. So.
And I think what we find is that we live for moments. It's not that the filler is bad, but we live for those moments. And when you get to that moment, it's like, that's what I did this for. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, the funny thing is, like, I look back at my career, and I think the thing, you know, of course the Olympics, big deal, right? But winning the overall World Cup title was, for me, it's just as big, if not bigger, an accomplishment. Right. It doesn't mean anyone to anyone outside of luge.
Right.
But, you know, to win a season-long title and to be the best over the course of an entire year. And to that point, no American had ever done that. So Chris and I were the first. So that was, you know, that was really, really cool. And that's, you know, something that you look back on, and that's just for you.
Right, right. Now, how nerve-wracking, I guess is the best way of putting it, is it to know that your sport is defined in fractions of a second, and it's a minute adjustment here or there that makes the difference between maybe 2nd place and 12th place?
Yeah. Well, we were, you know, if you can't live in that environment, then, you know, you're going to lose your mind. I mean, right, we were 0.02 of a second behind the German team for the gold. So if I look at our runs on TV, then I can tell you there's where we lost it. You know, you can see where you made mistakes. And so that's the good thing. You know, it gets hard when you look at your runs on video and you can't find those mistakes.
Right.
That's when you really start to go crazy, and which is what we went through leading right up to the Olympics. So, but again, I there was a big controversy about the racing shoes. Adidas was making the racing shoes for the Olympic Games and going into '98 during that time period. And they introduced this new fast racing shoe, but they only made enough for the German team. And so the guy who won the gold medal in men's singles annihilated the field. He won by I think he won by almost a second over 4 runs.
Which is unheard of, right?
He crushed everybody, right? So when asked, the American team protested because the rules said that all of the teams have to have the manufacturer has to make the same stuff available. So the US team protested, and the guy who won, his response was, those racing shoes are only worth about 0.02 of a second per run, which in his case didn't mean anything. Right. But with us, we lost by 0.02 of a second. But again, you know what? If I'm really just partially, I'm really joking, because if I look at that video, I know where we lost, and the German guys, they're our friends, and they beat us, and that's how it goes sometimes. So.
Well, and that kind of translates into what you're doing now, because you have to be able to keep people interested in what you're doing and want to be involved, and B, you don't win every time,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of life lessons in any competitive sport, I think. If you look at baseball as an example, no one's batting 1,000, not even close,
Right.
So, and certainly trying to get companies to sponsor luge is definitely, I'd kill for the worst Major League Baseball players batting out.
Right.
So, it's interesting to be in, I say it's the business of no. If you can't take no, you're in the wrong business. Right. So, but it's also, you got to get up and keep trying, because I know what it's like. I've been through it, and I want everyone who comes after me to have it like I did or better. So, that's what gets me going in the morning, and makes me want to do best for our athletes. That's what it is.
So what has changed in the sport that you're now trying to sell to people as opposed to what it was before? I mean, I've heard of, wind tunnels and all that good fun stuff as a training, but what has changed as far as now we're going to make this more available, more accessible to people?
Well, you just hit on a great point. We have 2 refrigerated tracks in the United States for the sport of luge. So we have to figure out ways to bring the sport to people. So we've got a couple different programs. One is it's called the White Castle Slider Search. Get it? Sliders. And
I see what you did there. Okay.
Yep. White Castle is Columbus-based company, so it's nice to go and visit them and visit Ohio State. So the Slider Search basically is a program that uses wheeled sleds, and we go from city to city around the country, and we look for kids aged 9 to 13 to try the sport, and then we invite them to either Lake Placid or Salt Lake to see how they do on the ice. So we'll see, in a normal year when you don't have COVID, you'll see about 700 kids per year.
Okay.
And we'll choose the best 100 and screen them again on the ice. And then we'll take those 100 and whittle them down to about 10 to maybe 15 kids and name them to our development team. We'd love to take larger numbers, but, ice time is a big challenge. We've got on the tracks, you have luge, you have bobsled, you have skeleton, and then you also have public rides. So you've got a lot of entities competing for track time. So, we're unfortunately somewhat limited in the number of athletes that we can take. So that's the Slider Search. And that goes, we're in 10 cities, 8 to 10 cities every year. around the country. And then we also have a program called the Luge Challenge, and that is a luge on ski hills program, which is we go and we build a little track, use plastic sleds, and we invite anyone and everyone to come out and, you know, have some kind of experience with our sport, introduce them to our athletes who are acting as coaches, and then we hold races, and it's really fun. And while that's more marketing driven, we're also keeping an eye out for any young athlete who might, you know, show some interest in the sport. And then, you know, the other thing is just kind of normal PR and publicity. It's, you know, making sure that we've got a great partnership with NBC to make sure that all of our World Cup races are on their platforms. And then, you know, making sure that we're out there in social media and on our website and engaging our sponsors to make sure that they're along the ride with us. And then on the technical side, I am involved on the technical, and by technical I mean sled development and technology. I'm involved because a lot of our sponsors donate those kinds of services to us. And while I'm not as versed as our coaches on the technology side, I'm able to speak the language and understand what's going on, and help them get what they need to make the sleds go faster. So what attributes make up a good slider? Or is it more varied than I'm trying to make it sound? No, it's a great question, and there are definite attributes. You need the speed and explosive power at the start to be able to move the sled quickly. The start's the only place you can accelerate the sled and gain time. Every place else down the track, you're trying not to lose time. So you need someone who's quick, powerful, explosive. And then from there, it's almost like polar opposite. You need to lay down, you need to be calm, you need to be able to have great body awareness to put the sled within an inch or two within this perfect, imaginary perfect line that exists down the track that gets you from point A being the start, point B being the finish, as quickly as possible. And you also need to do that while trying not to look, because anytime you pick your head up in our sport, you're creating aerodynamic drag. So you're trying not to look, and you're trying to drive this line, trying to stay as relaxed as possible, because your body is, in essence, you're part of the suspension system of the sled. So, you know, you're doing all this while going potentially north of 90 miles an hour. So, you know, there's a lot, and you're really processing a tremendous amount of information as you're going down, trying to control the sled using your shoulders and your feet to keep within an inch or two of this perfect line. So, the best Olympic, you know, I wish that people could watch a junior race in conjunction, you know, sort of like a split screen with the Olympics, because the top level athletes make it look so easy. Whereas, you know, watch a junior race and, you know, you see all
side to side.
You see all kinds of pain.
Well, and it's something you mentioned that I'm sure that if I thought about it, but I didn't think about it. That what we normally do in our everyday lives is we steer with our eyes. We see where we're going to go before we get there, and we make adjustments there. You're making adjustments without knowing, but I'm not quite sure I even can put that into words. That's kind of, wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of feel in the sport, and it's not only feel as to where you are on the track, but it's also feel as to, you know, is there a slight up and down, you know, say you go through a turn like this, like the sled behind me, that's Chris and I. So it's going that way, and, you know, you want to have a nice even line, but sometimes if you make a mistake, you know, the sled will move up and down if you've missed a driving point and have a waiver in that. And you need to be aware of those kinds of things so that you can correct them. You know, there's no such thing as a perfect run. So in your mind, you have to have all of these scenarios to make minor corrections to get yourself as close to perfect as you possibly can. And so that's where experience comes in. It's just running through a litany of possibilities to make sure that you're online and going as fast as you can and safely.
And as doubles, he's making adjustments while you're making adjustments, or?
Yeah, the guy in the back is steering with his shoulders. The guy in the front steers with his legs. And the guy in the back can't really see much. And he's also relying on the guy in front to help they're sort of, as you come into a turn, the front person will kind of move his head, and it's like, okay, because you can't see, you see the back of the helmet. Right. So that's kind of the cue that, okay, here comes my first drive for this turn. And then from there, it's all feel. And
because there's no walkie-talkie in your ear saying, here we go. Right.
No. Yeah. Even if you could talk, you wouldn't be able to communicate quickly enough because things happen so fast.
Wow.
By the time the words come out of your mouth, it's
100 meters past that spot. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. See, and this is why I love hearing the details of this, because again, as you said, you're in the car and you see a truck go by and go, I want to try that. And that's how we get people involved. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's certainly an oddball story. So,
well, we get a lot of that into sports because that's, we all get involved in things for the weirdest reasons, and we keep involved for the weirdest reasons, or we would be normal. And who wants to be normal?
Exactly. And I was very determined as a kid too. So, my parents could have said no, and that would have been the starting point for me getting what I wanted to do.
Right.
But they were great. They supported it, and it was awesome.
I really appreciate you taking the time. If you would, tell everybody where we can find information about the whole Olympic movement, but particularly the luge movement and everything like that.
Yeah. USA Luge, you can learn more about us at usaluge.org, and you can follow us on social media. You can just USA Luge, and you'll find us. And the teamusa.org is where you can find out about all sorts of different Olympic sports. And usaluge.org is a part of the teamusa.org website family, so you can learn about all types of different Olympic sports there.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time and explaining that I'm not the only person that took 12 years to graduate from Ohio State. So my parents would appreciate that. So
all right.
thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
I really appreciate it.